Good evening, everyone. We knew it's been a long day for each of us, and with that, to help us lighten up the mood and set our minds and ourselves for another lesson, we'll have first a simple game as a sort of motivational activity that is called Word Guess. And for this motivational activity, here is the instruction. Using the random letters placed in the table, all you have to do is to assemble word or words being asked in the given description below. Starting with the first description. It is broadly defined as any collection of written work. You are given 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The answer is literature. Next, it is a major type of literature that follows basic grammatical structures that illustrate the natural flow of conversation. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The answer is prose. You got it right. Next, it is a process of attending to learners' needs, experiences, and feelings and intervening so that they learn things and go beyond given. What is this word? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The answer is teaching. The next one. It is a defined plan of action or method that is used for achieving a goal or the skill in developing and undertaking such a plan or method. What is this word? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You got it right. The answer is strategy. And for the last description, it is a response to the question, are we all ready to learn something new today? The answer is yes, of course, and yay.
Yes, of course. We claim the energy and are all set and ready to learn new something this night.
Good evening, people of the universe. You're now tuned in to Radio Studio 143 341. We are your accomplice. I'm Felime Malapas Balyo. You can call me Miss Fem, and
This is Roan S. Malapo, Miss Roan for short. Good evening, everyone.
I can really see how good your evening is, Miss Roan. Anything to share?
Well, Miss Pam, I am excited about the topic that we're going to talk about this peaceful evening.
Oh, I see. I thought there was something else. But yes, the topic that we have this evening is quite interesting. And I'm guessing that we are ready, as well as our co-RS. So, what are we going to talk about this evening, Miss Roan?
Co-RS all together, only at Radio Studio, we have the strategies and teaching prose. With the following objectives, at the end of the lesson, the student should be able to recall understanding of prose literature, demonstrate knowledge about the strategies used in teaching prose, and reflect on the importance of teaching prose.
Right. An interesting topic as it is, and I know that some of our co-RS already have ideas in mind about this topic. And this time, we will dig deeper into these strategies in teaching prose. But before jumping into discussing those strategies, let's have first the definition of prose. In literature co-RS, we have two major types, and these are the prose and poetry. For this discussion, we will focus on prose. So, how do we define prose literature? Prose in literature comes from the Latin word prosa or ratio, meaning straightforward. From here, we define prose as a style of verbal or written language that does not follow a strict structure of rhyming, meter, etc. in contrast to poetry. Prose instead follows a basic grammatical structure as in arranging sentences and paragraphs that illustrate the natural flow of conversation or speech presented in a straightforward manner. Additionally, it is the most common form of writing used in both fiction and non-fiction that can be found in the following types of prose, such as novels. We have examples Harry Potter and Twilight, short stories, The Last Leaf, plays, legends. We have the Bicol legend as example, folk tales, fables, we have The Lion and the Mouse, meets the story of Cupid and Psyche. Also the anecdotes, essay, biography, news, oration, and many more. So that's quite a lot of information about prose, I guess. So Miss Roanne, I've read here a comment, as a future language teacher, why is it important to teach prose?
Oh, that's a good question, Miss Pam. On my part, as a future educator, it is important to the development of student writing and speaking habits. Then, it also aids the learners to develop their language ability, enable for them to use the English language effectively. Moreover, as a language teacher, teaching prose is highly important in that it plays a vital role to improve their vocabulary, explain the structure of sentences, and grasp the ideas of the author. Through teaching prose, the students have to express the ideas of the passage orally and in writing. Now, it's your turn. Let us all know the take of our co-RS on that question. You can comment your answer in the chat box and we'll have discussed it later. Again, the question is, as a future educator or teacher, why is it important to teach prose? Well, set aside this question for you for now, and we proceeding to discuss the strategy and teaching prose for effective teaching of prose in class. A while ago, Miss Pam gave us an idea or an overview of prose. It provides a loose structure for a writer which offers freedom and creativity and expression. With prose, a writer can be as imaginative and creative as they want, or they can write very dryly in order to convey a specific point. It all comes down to the writer's purpose and intended effect. At this point, I will be going to discuss the first two strategies in teaching prose, namely, silent reading and prose performance. Let's break it down to further understand each strategy. So, why do we mean by silent reading? A student's reading comprehension increases when they read quietly because it allows them to focus on the content rather than the pronunciation of individual words. We measure mental pictures of the subject being discussed while they read silently. We don't also have to read every single word at a time. So the purpose of silent reading by the student is to enable them to read silently and to pave way for extensive reading. The student should be able to follow the text in silent reading. It is helpful for the student to grasp the meaning of the passage. At the time of silent reading by the student, the teacher should move around the students and he has to pay attention to the whole class. So, there are two characteristics of silent reading. Through silent readings, a student's comprehension is enhanced since it allows them to concentrate on reading rather than pronunciation. This practice also allows children to read faster and improve comprehension. So these are two characteristics of silent reading. The first one is eye movement. It refers or it is moving the eyes very rapidly from left to right without looking back at the previous words. When it comes to reading, one of the earliest skills children have to learn is how to move their eyes across a line of print without losing their place as they go from word to word or line to line. It is learned visual motor skill that we don't use for any other task. It involves the eyes rapidly jumping from word to word. We then do a brief fixation of the word to allow the brain to intrude on its meaning. And the second one is complete silence. Includes non-movement of lip, no voicing out of words, only the eyes could interact with the text. Silent reading is the process of reading done only internally with the mind, without producing any sound. Therefore, in silent reading, you cannot notice any lip or tongue movement. Silent reading must significantly help the reader enjoy he or she reads. This is why silent reading can also be called reading for pleasure. Now, let's proceed to the benefits of silent reading. Reading silently improves students' understanding because it helps them concentrate on what they are reading rather than on pronunciation of individual words. When we read silently, we can form mental picture of the topic being discussed. Another benefits of silent reading is it also helps develop the skills of reading for a purpose, as the focus is on understanding the content without the additional burden of having to pay attention to pronunciation. The third one is silent reading improves students' understanding because it helps them concentrate on reading rather than pronunciation. This practice allows children to read faster and improve comprehension. And lastly, silent reading also helps develop reading skill for a purpose, as the focus is on understanding the content. We are already done discussing the first strategy, which is the silent reading. And now, we will move to the second one, which is the prose performances. So when we say prose performances, it is a prose interpretation, a fiction or non-fiction performance piece which may be drawn from the short story, essay, or novel. The focus of this event is on the development of the narrative or story. Play cuttings and poetry are prohibited. Use of manuscript is required. So in prose performances, there are 5 techniques to be remembered in prose performances, and these are the following. The first one is do not allow physical action to overshadow the spoken word. The second one is allow the voice, face, eyes, and gesture to work in unison with the literature. The third one is avoid technical tricks for the sole purpose of achieving audience reactions. The fourth one is realize that as the oral interpreter of the literature, you have a proximity and intimacy with the audience that cannot be matched by a performer on stage. And lastly, the interpreter receives immediate feedback and should not cross the audience comfort level between suggesting personal and becoming personal in literature. So that's all my discussion about the first 2 strategies and teaching prose. Do you have any question or clarification of what we discussed? So if none, I will give the floor to Miss Pele, who will discuss the continuation of our topic.
Thank you, Miss Ron, for that informative and interactive delivery. On my part, Co-RS, I'll be discussing other strategies in teaching prose because as you all know, there are actually lots of it. And I'll discuss with you some more strategies in teaching prose, starting with dramatic performances. In your high school days, surely, you have encountered tasks where you have to work in a group to present a selected scene or scenes, or probably the whole story of a certain literary piece under prose. To give example, in grade 9, we have William Shakespeare's well-known novel, which is the Romeo and Juliet, wherein to encourage your students' engagement in this piece, a teacher will give a group task acting on and presenting a literary piece through role play, in this case, Romeo and Juliet. This initiative of a teacher is under one of the teaching strategies in teaching prose, which is the dramatic performances. So, all about dramatic performances. It is simply the act of performing a drama or act of presenting a play, in this case, literary works under prose. And to carry out this kind of strategy, here are some helpful tips or steps. Letter A is to connect experiences to events found in the piece. We can do this by having good questioning techniques. Using Romeo and Juliet, for example, we can ask the students, have you experienced falling in love, or anyone here who has a crush? Or, are you like Juliet and or Romeo who experienced prohibited love? By asking this, it will serve as a hook to keeping your students' attention and letting them reflect. Letter B is to evaluate characters. Evaluating characters and their characterization helps in determining who are the protagonist and antagonist, their words and actions, because they mean what motivates them. Knowing the characters will help students to select who will suit to play the characters. Letter C, after evaluating characters, is to compare characters. By comparing the characters as to their commonalities and differences, we can get some hints about who's who, who's with, and the interrelations between and among characters and how this affect the whole story. This will deepen understanding of the piece. Letter D is to identify the setting and evaluate how it affects its characters and the story itself. The setting of the story plays an important role because it will tell the atmospheric sense of the story and tell something about the characterizations of the characters. For example, Co-RS in Romeo and Juliet, the story happened in Verona, wherein it is believed that the Italian setting reinforces the play's overarching theme that the lovers cannot escape their fate. Additionally, Romeo and Juliet also emphasize the division between the two symbolic worlds that Romeo and Juliet inhabit within Verona. Letter E is for us to identify the plot along with the major and minor conflicts, climax, and resolution, and anything included in the plot of the story. Now, identifying the plot along with the major and minor conflicts, climax, and resolution of a piece will give us knowledge of the totality of the piece. It will answer the following questions: where the presentation should start, how to keep it going, and what should be the ending to deliver the piece as actual and real as it is as possible. Letter F is to analyze the literary features or sense of the piece. This is through understanding the literary devices used, the author him or herself, the length of the piece, etc. This will add to a better understanding of the piece, resulting in a deeper engagement with the piece that can help for so-called internalization. And the last one here, the last step or techniques, is the internalization and delivery. Finally, in teaching prose through dramatic performances, internalization and delivery matter most. This is how the presentation and realization stage of the piece will be conveyed through the actors and actresses and the overall preparations made. The aim is to make it look like the dramatic performance is the piece itself and not just from a piece. So those were some of the techniques we can use to effectively employ dramatic performances as a strategy in teaching prose. Now, why do we need to do so? What benefits can a teacher and most especially students get from this kind of strategy? I'll give you some reasons and you can also share your thoughts in the chat box Co-RS. We have here the general principles such are: dramatic performances helps in developing vocabulary in conversation and developing literary interpretation skills. For specific principles, we have the following. It helps in developing interaction since it is a group task. It helps in developing critical reading and thinking and developing creative writing and performances. Moving on, the last strategy in teaching prose that I will share with you and we can use is the 5S prose strategy and what it is about. 5S prose strategy refers to the speaker, situation, sentence, shift, and syntax. The main objectives of this strategy is to allow students to analyze the story or the literary prose purely on the basis of the types of words and sentences used, since we've discussed earlier that prose follows a basic grammatical structure as in arranging sentences and paragraphs that illustrate the natural flow of conversation or speech presented in a straightforward manner. So, the question is, how does 5S prose strategy works? Basically, it can be done using a graph like this one. We have here the speaker, situation, sentence, shift, and syntax. For speaker, our aim here is to identify who is or are the speakers in the piece or a short story. For situation, in here we can use this guide question. What is or are the happenings in the story? Can you tell what the situation is about? For the sentence, our aim here is to identify what types of sentences are used and how are these sentences used to reveal the character's emotions. The next one, we have the shift. It is about the shift in the tone of the characters and or situations in the story. And the last S is the syntax. Syntax focuses on the arrangement or order of words determined by both the writer's style and grammar rules. The use of syntax in a literary piece is that it will give you an idea on what is the literary writing of the author and the overall impact of his or her literary piece. From here, the question that we can ask is, how does the syntax help you to infer the gist? Now, to further our understanding of the 5S prose strategy in teaching prose, let us have this literary piece. It is a short story shared by V.G. Gupta in English for Class 7 entitled A Monk and a Man. And we may ask you to also write and identify the 5S in this short story and share it to the class using the chat box. Again, what we are looking for in here are the speaker, situation, sentence, shift, and syntax. So let me read to you this short story, A Monk and a Man. Once a young man was passing through a village, he heard a monk saying, "I can give you everything that you want. Come to me and take it." Hearing so, the young man thought, why not check whether he could give him what he wanted. The young man went to the monk and told him that he wanted to become an entrepreneur. "Could you give me some money so that I can start my own business on a large scale?" The monk placed his hand on the left palm of the man and said, "I am giving you the most precious thing that is called time. Hold it and never lose it." Again, he placed his hand on the right palm of the man and said, "I am giving you the second most precious thing that is called patience. Whenever you don't get results despite giving time, wear it." Hearing these words of the monk, the young man went away from there. After that, the young man started a small business and he worked diligently. He never lost his time and always had patience. 7 years later, he became a successful businessman and was very happy thinking the words of that monk. Now, the moral of this story is that you should never waste your time and always be patient. One day, you will definitely achieve your goal. Now, let's move on to analyzing this short story using, of course, the 5S prose strategy that we have discussed earlier. Let us identify the speaker, situation, sentence, shift, and syntax. For the speaker, who is the speaker of the story? The speaker of the story is an unknown narrator. Now, what is the situation of the story? The situation is an aspiring young entrepreneur passed through a village where he heard a monk saying that he can give everything that one wants, and so he gave it a try. So this is where the whole story started. For the sentence, what are the types of sentences that we found in the short story? These are the declarative sentence. Of course, the narrator tells details and descriptively narrates the short story. We have also the interrogative sentence. The young man asking the monk if he could give him money to start a business, and how this sentence revealed the emotion of the young man. Responding to the call of the monk, giving it a try, and asking the monk, "Could you give me a money?" shows how determined the young man is to build a business and become an entrepreneur. And the third sentence that we found from that short story is the imperative sentence. It is the monk giving the young man a piece of advice or instruction. And how does this sentence reveal the emotion and personality of the monk? It shows that the monk is a wise helper and advisor. He doesn't give what the young man asked, but instead gave him more than that. The lessons that he gave the young man about the time and patience were engraved in the young man's mind and heart that contributes to his successful career 7 years after. For the shift in the story is how that encounter of the young man with the monk changed him and his perspective about business and being an entrepreneur. And lastly, for the syntax, as you can see, the words used were easy to comprehend, which is good for a short story, since the aim is to convey the whole story in a short, simple, and concise manner. The author follows the basic structures of a short story. We have the characters, setting, plot, and theme. These things result in a better understanding of the story and allow the readers to easily grasp the moral of the story. That is how this 5S prose strategy in teaching prose works. It is helpful especially to young learners and readers because this is the basic and good start on one's engagement with literature. 5S prose strategy in teaching prose is significant as it develops the learner's ability to read, comprehend, and lastly analyze the literary piece, which contributes to a more meaningful learner's literature encounter. There you have it. Those were the strategies in teaching prose.
Thank you, Miss Pam, for that comprehensive discussion. And for the sake of everyone, I will give you the wrap-up of what I and Miss Pam have discussed after this short break.
To the sun and moon, hello! International State College of the Philippines!
Laughing in front.
I wish I could be the mother. I could be the mother. I can be the wish wheel. I would like to greet you the happy birthday and I wish you the best of everything. Sorry, I'm not the speaker straight, but I'm just adjusting. What's it in brains, huh?
We're tuning in again to Radio Studio 143431 and GoRS. Here is Miss Roanne to give you the wrap-up.
To sum it up, prose is a verbal or written language that follows the natural flow of speech. It is the most common form of writing used in both fiction and non-fiction. Prose comes from the Latin word prosa or ratio, meaning straightforward. And these are 4 strategies in teaching prose, and these are: first, silent reading, which helps develop reading skill for a purpose as the focus is on understanding the content. The second is prose performances, refer to using a short story, parts of a novel, or published work of prose. Students provide an interpretation of one or more selection with a time limit. The third one is dramatic performances. It's a presentation done from memory from a script or play. Dramatic performances has a time limit of 10 minutes and a short introduction presenting the piece. And lastly, the 5S prose strategy stands for speaker, situation, sentences, shifts, and syntax. This strategy is to enable the student to analyze a story purely on the basis of the types of sentences and words used in a story. The plus point of this strategy is students themselves engage in reading the text and making sense of it.
You heard it right, Co-RS. Thank you for the wrap-up, Miss Roanne. Right now, I and Miss Roanne have already done our part in discussing the strategies in teaching prose. At this point, it's now your turn, our Co-RS. Should you have anything to add, clarify, and ask about the topic that we just had, it is highly welcome. To do that, you may leave it on our chat box. And while waiting for that, I and Miss Roanne will read some comments regarding the question raised earlier. As a future language teacher, why is it important to teach prose?
I guess there are no more inquiries, Miss Pam. That was an informative discussion. Thank you, Co-RS. I assume that we're done here, Miss Pam.
You're right, Miss Roanne. Once again, thank you for being with us, Co-RS. It's already time to bid goodbye for now. I and Miss Roanne will be happy to be with you till next time here on your Radio Studio 14341. Have a good night.
Happy learning, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you, Miss Roanne.
Thank you, Miss Pam and Co-RS.